Finn was supposed to be the Jedi. Not Rey, not Kylo Ren, but Finn. A stormtrooper who refused to pull the trigger. A soldier who had been taken away from his family as a child, raised by the First Order, and taught that his only purpose was to obey. And yet, when the moment finally came, Finn chose to run. He chose freedom, he chose his friends, and eventually, without even realizing it, he chose the Force. Because by the end of the sequel trilogy, we learn that Finn is Force sensitive. But imagine for a moment that the Force Awakens had actually followed through on that idea. Imagine that the moment Finn picked up Anakin Skywalker's lightsaber wasn't simply the beginning of Rey's Jedi journey. Imagine if it was the beginning of his. What if Finn was the Jedi hero of the sequel trilogy? And if that happened, the entire story of Star Wars would change. So, in The Force Awakens, the story begins almost exactly the same. FN 2187 is a stormtrooper. He has spent his entire life being told that the people he's fighting are the enemies. That individuality is weakness. That fear is something to suppress. And that obedience is everything. The First Order orders FN 2187 to execute civilians. He raises his weapon, but he can't do it. Something inside of him tells him not to. Finn doesn't know it yet, but that moment is the first time he truly listens to the Force. Not because he can move objects, not because he can see the future, but because the Force has always been about more than power. It's about choices, and Finn makes his first real choice. He runs. He rescues Poe Dameron. He escapes the First Order. And eventually he finds himself on Jakku, where he meets Rey. And that's where our story changes. Because when Finn eventually finds himself inside Maz Kanata's castle, something happens that nobody expects. He sees the lightsaber, Anakin Skywalker's lightsaber, the weapon that belonged to Anakin Skywalker, then Luke Skywalker, a weapon that has already passed through generations of Jedi. Finn reaches for it, and the moment his hand touches the hilt, everything goes quiet. Finn sees flashes of a battlefield, a burning city, stormtroopers, a red lightsaber, a young man screaming, and then a voice. Not words, just a feeling. Run. Finn drops the saber, everyone stares at him, but Maz doesn't. She already knows. She looks at Finn and simply says, "The Force has found you." Finn doesn't believe her. Why would he? He's a stormtrooper, not a Jedi. He's not a Skywalker. He's not even sure who his parents are. But Maz knows something Finn doesn't. The Force doesn't care where you came from. The First Order attacks, Finn and Rey escape, and eventually they find themselves on Starkiller Base. Everything seems to be falling apart. Han Solo is dead, Kylo Ren has murdered his father, and Finn is desperately trying to save Rey. Then Kylo arrives. Finn grabs the lightsaber, and for the first time he doesn't simply pick it up because he needs a weapon. He picks it up because something inside him tells him to do it. Kylo looks at him, holding the Skywalker lightsaber, and for the first time in years, Kylo Ren feels something he doesn't understand. Fear. Because Kylo has spent his entire life obsessing over bloodlines. Vader, Luke, the Skywalkers. He believes that power comes from legacy, and now the Force has chosen someone who has absolutely none. Finn charges, the fight begins. Finn isn't suddenly an expert. He gets thrown around, he gets cut, and he's terrified. But every time Kylo attacks, Finn moves before he understands why. A strike comes, Finn blocks. Kylo swings, Finn ducks. Finn doesn't know how he's doing it. He just knows that when he stops thinking, the Force moves through him. Eventually, Kylo overwhelms him. Finn is wounded, and the lightsaber falls. And then Rey arrives, but this time something is different. Rey doesn't take the lightsaber from Finn. She helps him stand, and together, they face Kylo Ren. The First Order falls back, Starkiller Base is destroyed, and Finn survives. But Luke Skywalker has felt what happened. He felt the Force awaken, and it wasn't just Rey. It was Finn. How would The Last Jedi change? Luke Skywalker doesn't immediately want another student. He has spent years believing the Jedi should end. But then he sees Finn, a former stormtrooper, A young man who has never even been taught the Jedi code, never been trained to meditate, never been taught how to wield a lightsaber, and yet the Force chose him anyway. Luke asks him, "Why do you want to become a Jedi?" Finn doesn't have an answer, because he doesn't. He doesn't want to become powerful. He doesn't want revenge. He doesn't want to be famous. He just wants people to stop being hurt. And that's exactly what makes Luke hesitate, because Luke realizes something. Maybe the Jedi weren't supposed to be people who were born into greatness. Maybe they were supposed to be people who chose to do the right thing. Finn's training begins, and it's terrible. He fails, constantly. He can't control his emotions. He can't concentrate. He has no idea what he's doing. But he keeps getting back up, because Finn has already spent his entire life learning how to survive. Now he's learning how to live. And Rey is there too, but Rey's role is different. She isn't Finn's replacement, she's his equal. The two of them become something the Jedi haven't seen in generations. The two people discovering the Force together. And while Finn struggles to understand what it means to be a Jedi, Rey struggles with something completely different. She wants to know where she came from. Finn wants to know who he can become. That difference becomes the heart of their friendship. Meanwhile, Kylo becomes obsessed with Finn, because Finn represents everything Kylo hates. Kylo was born into the greatest family in the galaxy. Finn was stolen from him. Kylo was given every opportunity. Finn was given a blaster and told to obey. Kylo chose the dark side. Finn chose freedom. And yet, the Force chose Finn. Kylo can't understand it, so he tries to destroy him. He tells Finn that the Jedi will never accept him, that Luke will always see him as a stormtrooper, that Rey will eventually surpass him, and Finn almost believes him. Because deep down, Finn still wonders whether he's worthy. When Luke tells him something, being a Jedi isn't about being worthy, it's about what you choose when you aren't. And Finn finally understands. His greatest strength was never his connection to the Force. It was the choice he made before he even knew the Force existed. He chose not to kill. He chose to run. He chose to save Poe. He chose Rey. And now, he chooses to fight. How would the rise of Skywalker look different? Years pass. The First Order is stronger. The Resistance is struggling. And Finn has become a Jedi. But he isn't like Luke, and he isn't like Anakin. He isn't even like Kylo. Finn has no famous name, no legendary bloodline, and no prophecy. And that's exactly what makes him dangerous. Because Finn understands the First Order better than anyone. He knows how stormtroopers think. He knows what they're afraid of. And he knows something the Resistance doesn't. Most of them don't actually want to be there. They were taken, just like he was. Then Finn discovers something. He's not the only Force-sensitive stormtrooper. There are others. People who have felt the Force. People who have questioned their orders. People who have secretly wondered whether they were meant for something else. And suddenly Finn realizes his purpose. He isn't supposed to destroy the First Order by himself. He's supposed to give its soldiers the same thing he was given. A choice. The Resistance launches its final assault. Ships pour into the sky. The First Order prepares to crush them. But then something unexpected happens. Stormtroopers begin dropping their weapons. One, then another, then hundreds. Finn stands in the middle of the battlefield, not as a general, not as a king, not as a legendary Skywalker, but as one of them, and tells them, "You don't have to fight." And slowly the stormtroopers turn. The First Order begins collapsing from within, because the greatest weapon Finn ever had wasn't a lightsaber. It was his ability to show other people what they could choose. But there is still one final enemy, Palpatine. The Sith have returned. The Emperor wants Rey because of her blood. He believes her lineage makes her powerful. But Finn sees something different. He sees a galaxy that has spent thousands of years believing that power belongs to certain families. Skywalkers, Palpatines, Sith, Jedi, kings, generals. And he realizes something, that the Force has never belonged to them. It belongs to everyone. Finn and Rey stand together, not as replacements for one another, but as two completely different people who found their own paths through the Force. Rey confronts her grandfather. Finn faces the soldiers who once stood beside him. And the Resistance fights alongside the very people who were supposed to destroy it. The battle is chaos. Palpatine unleashes his power, and Rey is overwhelmed. Finn feels her fear. He reaches out, not with anger, not with hatred, but with connection, and Rey gets back up. Together, they defeat Palpatine, not because one of them was destined to, but because they chose to stand together. What can we decide happens after the rise of Skywalker? How do we continue the story of Finn as a Jedi? The war is over. The First Order is gone and the galaxy is free. But Finn doesn't celebrate for long because he knows that there are still children out there who were stolen from their families. There are still Force-sensitive people who have never been trained. Then there are still people who believe the Jedi are nothing more than just stories. And Finn realizes that becoming a Jedi was never the end of his story. It was only the beginning. He looks at the lightsaber in his hand, the weapon that once belonged to Anakin, and the weapon that once belonged to Luke. But he puts it away. Because Finn doesn't need to spend the rest of his life trying to become the next Skywalker. He doesn't need to become Luke, Anakin, or anyone else. He can just become himself. And that's where the new Jedi Order begins. Not with a famous bloodline, not with a prophecy or a chosen one, but with a former stormtrooper who was given a choice and decided to give that choice to everyone else. And that's why I think making Finn the Jedi hero could have completely changed the sequel trilogy. Because Finn's story was already about freedom. It was about identity. It was about choosing who you want to be instead of accepting what someone else has decided for you. And that's exactly what Star Wars has always been about. Anakin Skywalker was told he was destined for greatness. Luke Skywalker was told he could never escape his father's legacy. Rey spent years believing she was a nobody. And Finn actually was nobody. He didn't know his parents. He didn't have a famous name. He wasn't born into the Jedi Order. He wasn't raised to become a hero. He was raised to be a weapon, and he chose not to be one. And that's more than enough. Because maybe the greatest message the sequel trilogy could have given us was this: that you don't need to have to come to greatness. You don't have to come from greatness to become great. Finn didn't need to be a Skywalker or a Palpatine or even a Jedi, but the Force had chosen him. Then perhaps the greatest Jedi of the sequel trilogy wouldn't have been the person with the strongest bloodline. It would have been the person who had the most to lose and still chose to do the right thing. Finn wasn't supposed to inherit the Skywalker legacy. He was supposed to create his own, something new. And maybe that's exactly what the sequel trilogy needed. If you enjoyed this video and want more like it, please like and subscribe to keep them coming. Thank you, and may the Force be with you.